under the current lease arrangements, the landlord agrees to give to the tenant within 7 days of entering into a lease or a residential tenancy agreement, a copy of the bylaws. That's changing. So the new lease and the under the new Residential Tenancies Act, or at least the amendments to the Residential Tenancies Act and the new regulations, it's changed the time frame. It hasn't changed the requirement to provide them, it's just changed the time frame in which the tenant is to receive those bylaws. And it makes sense when you think about it. If you are entering into a lease to live in a strata complex, you actually want to know what the requirements are, particularly around pets, around what are the common areas, what are the usage of some of the common areas. You actually need to know those sorts of things before you enter into a lease. Because if it's a no pet bylaw in there, then you've actually got to get some clarity around whether you can get that pet in or whether you can't get that pet in. So I guess I focus on the pets because for me that would be an absolute essential. So now what it's saying in the new Residential Tenancies Regulation is that a tenant must be given the bylaws prior to entering into the lease. So now it's not within 7 days of entering into the lease, so it's not afterwards, it's before. So really quite clear. So, and obviously under that disclosure principle around that. So, I mean, there's lots of things under the disclosure principle, and it's, I think it's section 26 talks about this, and it's giving more information. So it's part A of that is just about giving the bylaws prior to signing the lease. The other one is if the strata renewal committee, so if the strata complex is looking at redeveloping and this is under the Strata Schemes Development Act, not the Management Act, and they're looking at redeveloping the whole site, a tenant has the right to know. And it's very clear now that that is part of the disclosures that need to happen. So bylaws beforehand, there'll be nothing in the bylaws about the renewal committee. And the second part of that disclosure is that if a strata renewal committee is currently established in relation to that particular strata scheme, that is a point of disclosure for the tenant. So you need to remember those. Now, I mean, very briefly, then that's about strata properties. Now, there's a difference. What's important to remember here is that if they're managed under the Strata Schemes Management Act, the tenant must receive the bylaws prior to entering into the lease. If there's a renewal committee in place, which means it's being developed, they need to be informed of that as well. However, if the premises are under a community title or they're managed under, again, under the Development Act in terms of a renewal place, the agent is required to provide the bylaws within 7 days of signing the lease. So they're saying that if it's a strata complex, it's before. If it's a community title property, then it's within 7 days. Still, you need to, a tenant, if you can get them beforehand, obviously that's better practice. But what the regulations are saying is that you have till 7 days afterwards. So before for strata, within 7 days if it's a community title, and within 7 days if there is a renewal committee in place. So really quite, and you've got to remember, there are fines attached to this. So they apply to the landlord or the agent, whoever's entering into that residential tenancy agreement in relation to that lease and the disclosure requirements around that.